wondering about that. Okay.
And then I have a Glock 9mm.
But why do they need a stormwater pond within the dedicated parkway?
My dad got it, and he didn't like it, so he gave it. And then I have, I think it's a Winchester 222.
Well, that's what they get out of the land, and it should never have been allowed. What is a park out there in the subdivision? It's nothing more than a pond that grows grass. Yeah, and then several months out of the year it's just dry. And I asked Kurt about that. Well, there was kind of a loophole that allowed to double up on park and storm water collection to be one and the same. It was bullshit. It should have never happened. I don't know who ever thought of that and allowed that to pass, but that should never happen. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the City Council workshop for March 12th, 2019. This is the time for public input. If anybody from the general public would like to come up and address the council on anything that's not on the agenda, you may do so. If you have anything that you would like to address that's on the agenda, you'll have that opportunity during discussion of that item. So is there anybody who would like to come forward and address the City Council on anything that's not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will move on to general items. Under general items, we have the reappointment of Evan Bruce to the Yellowstone Historic Preservation Board for a term ending December 31st, 2020. It's a 2-year term. There was some confusion when we appointed him the first time, and I think we've worked that out with Yellowstone County, and we are now looking at appointing him for that term ending in 2020. Are there any questions on that appointment? Seeing none, we will move on to executive review. And under executive review, we have a resolution, which is a resolution of the City Council authorizing the developer of Iron Horse Station subdivision to install a stormwater pond within dedicated parkland within the subdivision, which would be pursuant to LMC 16.40.040. And I have both the city planner, Nick Altamagona, and City Public Works Director, Kurt Markegard, to come up and introduce that to the council.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, Mr. Lurker. Tonight you have before you a resolution that actually came out of Park Board, and a recommendation out of Park Board was to allow Iron Horse Station development to use dedicated parkland for a stormwater facility. And as it's stipulated in the resolution, that those are allowable under the LMC. It is allowable if it's part of an amenity to that park. So they went to Park Board, gave their presentation of why they would need it. Due to the terrain up there and the layout of a street, when you get towards the west end of the project, there's going to need some stormwater detainage and retention, and this is the logical place to put that stormwater. So with it, trying to follow the LMC, we'd like Council's permission to go forward with that, along with the Park Board's recommendation to allow the developer to install those stormwater ponds in that park. Once, if the council agrees with staff and the Park Board, we would then go into, they would have to submit a design for that. And we've already talked about, I talked with Colton. Colton is actually here with the Territorial Landworks too. And he's the one that's been moving this forward and trying to get it through the process of the city process to get it onto your agenda tonight. So that's essentially what it is to allow the stormwater to go in there and to allow it to become part of the amenity of that park. And you do have a submittal that was attached that shows the area as far as the layout of that subdivision, but I also do have an aerial map of that area, if you don't have that before you, and I don't think you do, because I forgot to give it out to you, but I do have that if anybody would like to have that aerial map, to look at the area and see what it's like.
Council, like that passed out? Like to look at those? Might as well do that since you printed them out. I know it makes great wallpaper, but probably be better served given to the council.
And the portion that we're actually dealing with is down at the far end. It's the large area next to Alder. Yeah, next to Alder. And the parcel is identified as C15061. And then if you reference back to your other information, you can see where they're proposing to put the stormwater pond in there. It currently borders, there is a small little wetland area that's adjacent to the west of that property, that parkland up there in question. So there's some, it's very hard to see on this, but there's a little, looks like a water area along some Russian olive trees there on the west end of the property. So.
Are there any questions from the council? I'd like to remind the council that you'll have 2 bites at this, because this is merely allowing for it, then which is pursuant to the Laurel Code. The second would be the proposal for what kind of pond and wetland we would have put in there, which would be the second round you would have to consider.
Currently, the design parameters, and maybe Colton can answer a little bit more better, but or in more detail. But currently, I think it's about 2.5 to 3 foot deep. If that was my recollection of what the anticipated stormwater levels would be in there. So we're talking about 2 to 3 feet of water during a rain event going in there. So,
Councilmember Closey.
So does the work on this actually have to go out to bid then, or does it have to go out to bid to have the work done? No. Okay.
No, it'd be a responsibility of the developer. It's just they want to make sure that the council is fine with that, and the current ordinance allows for that. Because it is in what is known as a park.
the one thing that I talked to the legal advice was because it didn't specify in the ordinance exactly who gives that permission. It says it can be allowed as long as it's an amenity, and when I asked Mr. Painter that, he stipulated, well, the local governing body is the regulatory authority then for asking permission, so that's why we're here tonight. Staff can't make that recommendation. It goes back, when it isn't stipulated in the LMC, it goes back to you as a board, or as a body, as a local governing body to make that allowances.
Any other questions on that? I thank you very much.
Okay.
Under executive review, the next item, item 3, is resolution. This is a resolution seeking hard drives for the City of Laurel's 2019 pavement maintenance project and authorizing the mayor to sign a contract for completion of the project. The CAO was here with Public Works Director Mark Yard for the bid opening. He was also present in 1 or 2 meetings that I wasn't able to be involved in on the project. This was the same project that we had last year, that we had bid last year, although we had the contractor did not want to honor the bid because we weren't going to be able to perform the work until this spring. He didn't know, he thought maybe he'd be all right on gravel, but he didn't know how he would be on oil. If there could be something that happened that raised the price of oil dramatically, then he would be suffering. So we decided to terminate that and wait and rebid that, which we just did. So I'll have Mr. Lurker introduce that.
Thank you, Mayor. And with this bid, Hard Drives Construction, they were the lowest bidder on this project. The estimate came in, again, this is our engineer's estimate, came in at $161,367. Hard Drives Construction, they came in at $137,698. That figure that Hard Drives came in is about 8,000, and this just ballpark math, 8,000 above what our bid was back in the fall when they could not guarantee the rates based on the oil prices. So the next bid was 158,000. If you look on page 2 of that insert for you in your packet. And the start date, if the council approves this, the start date will be as soon as weather permits. They'll get on the chip crack seal as soon as possible, and then they'll start with the pavement as soon as all the snow and the weather starts to get better. So, any questions? Back to you.
No questions? No questions for staff? All right, we'll move on to the next resolution, number 4. This is a resolution of the City Council approving the 3-year agreement between the City of Laurel and the local union, Local 303, American Federation of State and County and Municipal Employees, the AFSCME. Mr. Lurker was spent a lot of time in the negotiating, along with our negotiating team, including the city attorney, working on this contract for the police department, and we were kind of under the gun getting that started, but we got it off the ground and provided some educational tools for those that were involved in the negotiation team. So I will again pass that on to CAO Lurker to present to council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With this new union contract, the major changes in it was to improve some of the work-life balance in the form of benefits, pay increases, the way that they do vacation, and ensuring that they have more opportunities to get the training they need to do the job safely. I take a little personal interest in this coming from the law enforcement field. I want to make sure that our first responders are properly taken care of, and I did not have a problem making some of these negotiations here that the union asked for. And part of our union negotiation team is our new union president, Jessica from the police department. She's one of our lead dispatchers, and she's here as well. The big things that I'll point out to you is that you may see some changes in Section 9. Our officers, they often buy some of their own equipment that they use for the job, so you'll see some increases in there to allow for that equipment purchases. Also on page, if you're using the page numbers in the square, page 31, the health insurance plan, we increased the allowable limits for that so that it meets the same benefits or the same limits that are provided to other city employees that are not union. And then we also placed a 2% annual pay increase for the officers to account for cost of living and things like that. So are there any questions for me or for Jessica? Jessica, did you want to say anything, or did I cover everything for you?
Nope, you pretty much covered everything.
I do want to point out that her and her team were very good. They held me at right to the end on everything to make sure that we got everything done correctly. So my hat's off to them. Wow, tough crowd. Back to you.
I see that. Are there any other questions on the 303 negotiation? I believe we have 2 years before we enter into our next one with one of the other unions. So we will be prepared. We will bring that to you at the conclusion of that. So we will move on if there's nothing else to item 5 under executive review. And item 5 is an ordinance, which is an ordinance amending Title II, Chapter 2.08, Chapter 2.12, and Chapter 2.60 of the Laurel Municipal Code for the purpose of clarifying that the current city employees are not eligible to serve as members of committees and commissions or to serve as elected city officers in accordance with Montana law. Supporting documents for that have been provided to you. So this was something that from the election last year that there was questions and there were accusations that everybody was aware, and there were accusations that not everybody was aware, and I had council members had talked to me about it. I told the council members that had asked me about this that I would bring it forward as an amendment to the ordinance so that it was clear and there would be now no question whether you can work for the city and be in control of your own job, so to speak, so that take care of that conflict of interest. So that's what this is for, and we have 2 letters from the Attorney General on 2 previous issues, one being recently the Stevensville mayor in Montana that was on the Stevensville Volunteer Fire Department, and being elected mayor, he was in charge of his own position as volunteer fireman and was not allowed to hold both positions, and he asked for an opinion from the Attorney General, and the Attorney General gave him what he thought was applicable to that situation. Are there any questions on that? Council Vice President McGee.
Yeah, so the ordinance here specifically says current city employees. Are volunteers employees, as in the case of a volunteer firefighter in Stevensville?
Yes, they're part-time employees.
Then I'm going to have to resign from something.
Is that right?
If this passes, I'm going to have to resign from something.
Oh, you're concerned about, was Stevensville, I'm trying to think, if he was he just on that fire department? Or
Yeah, he was a volunteer fireman, according to this. Also a fireman in the town's volunteer fire department is what this letter says.
Okay, well, I'll get the attorney to provide an answer to that question for you.
No, but I'm on a city. So it's, I mean, as I see it, what it does is it's trying to limit somebody from having oversight of themselves, is the way the intent of the ordinance. You know,
correct.
Which would make my current volunteer reserve police work make me ineligible while I did that post to run for mayor, for example, which I'm not going to do, by the way. But anyway, the one is not compatible with the other because the mayor has ultimate oversight over, like, the police department and its members, which include the police reserves. So I get that.
Right.
But according to this second from the Office of the City Attorney in Missoula, a city employee may not simultaneously serve as a city council member pursuant to the legal doctrine of incompatible offices. And so if that's true, and somebody like myself is a city employee in addition to being a city council member, the two are not compatible.
That's highly possible. We'll find out. We'll,
Okay. So that's my observation. Okay.
We'll have Sam here next week, and we can brief the council.
Okay.
And I don't know, yeah, if that constitutes an employee versus a firefighter that's actually on call every time a fire call comes in. But I'll find out.
Yeah.
That's a good question.
Okay. Thank you.
Maybe out of the job.
One or the other.
We'll do that. Are there any other questions? Those very interesting questions. So. Seeing no other questions, other than to answer Council Vice President McGee's question, which we will get an answer for him, we will move on to council issues. Under council issues, we'll go around the table. Is there anything Councilmember Sparks has for us, like to bring forward? No. Councilmember Herr?
Happy New Night, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Monsieur?
I have nothing,
Councilmember Closey? Do you have
I have
anything?
nothing, sir. Thank you.
Councilmember Stokes? Council Vice President McGee?
Yes, sir. One more question. I should have asked this earlier, but I didn't think of it earlier. When we were talking about the authorizing the developer of Iron Horse Station subdivision to install a stormwater pond within the dedicated parkland, it's my understanding that the Elena subdivision has that very situation, that the park there in the subdivision doubles for stormwater collection. And I'd like to know, my question now would be, and maybe it needs a little time for research, is if the city council previously approved that as well, or if that was something that was done without city council approval, since the governing body, Sam pointed out, that falls back on to make the determination of whether that can be done or not.
We'll get that answer for you as well. Obviously, we know in the past that some things have perhaps maybe should have gone through council and hadn't always gone through council, so we will find out for you.
Yeah. Well, if I may, Mr. Mayor, the reason I think that's important is because if we're setting a precedent here, we need to know, how it transpired before, I think.
Okay. Anything else?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right. No, thank you very much. Council President Eaton.
Yes, thank you. I just have one thing. There will be a Public Works meeting this coming Monday, March 18th, at 6 p.m. here, well, actually in the conference room. And we only have one additional issue that has come up since the January meeting. And so we will be making up for whatever transpired in February that we didn't review, and then having our regular information for March. So now is the time. If you have anything that you want on the agenda, feel free to express that to either myself or Public Works Director Markey Guard, so that can get on the agenda for Monday. And that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on the agenda is other items, for which we have none. Following that, we have review of draft council agenda. concerns with the draft council agenda?
Okay.
I realize the council hasn't had time to look at, or we haven't had a committee, whether it be Park Board or Public Works, to look at the ordinance on our current ordinance on boulevards, and whether or not the council is interested in looking at some dryscape options for people who wish not to water their boulevards or have difficulty in spending the money, the resources that it takes to water those boulevards. In as much, we still did not give an answer to our gentleman that brought forward the issue with rocks, and we haven't adopted anything other since then, so that will be coming forward to you, and you will need to make a decision one way or the other on that, at least for the time being, until which time there are or may not be other options, and what those options would entail for boulevards. Council President Eaton.
And in addition to that, there's also the issue of, I think several council members had expressed a desire to put some teeth into the ordinances or laws or wherever they're coming from, that would make it rather punitive in the case of a very clear violation. And is there going to be anything coming up along those lines as well?
The administration is working right now to make violations of ordinances that are flagrant violations of ordinances that can be enforced and will be enforced and will be levied, whatever can be levied against an individual that chooses not to conform to what the council has provided in the form of an ordinance. And we'll continue to try to keep you updated on that progress. But we're moving forward and trying to make sure that one of the problems we have are some issues are something that code enforcement can handle. Others have to go to the police department, so we have to get that mechanism worked out with the police department. And obviously we don't have something like an animal control officer, which we used to have a part-time animal control officer. That would be somebody that would have handled some of those issues. So we're trying to work through the mechanics and find a way to be more organized in handling those kind of issues when they come up. Anything else on that? Attendance at the upcoming council meeting. Anybody who's not going to be able to make the council meeting? Councilmember Sparks. Anybody else? Everybody else? Going once, going twice? All right. Should be fine then. Yeah, right. Not allowed. Under announcements, we have employee and volunteer recognition. So we can go through these. We don't have a huge list. And we have Christopher Erb, 10 years down at the library. We have volunteers on fire, Sean McCleary, Travis Nagel, both 10 years. Jennifer Winchell on fire, 2 years. Ambulance, we have 3. Christopher Franklin, Levi Vandersloot, both 3 years. And that's saying something, actually. Jacob Hand, 2 years on the ambulance. So if you get a chance to see, or if you know any of those people, it'd be nice to thank them for their service, because without that, we would not be a place that people want to come and live.
So, Mr. Mayor, concerning this, I normally send a note to everybody I can in a month. Did we miss February with the volunteers? There were none?
We didn't. We just didn't read through them because we had quite a list.
Okay. I never saw it in print.
First workshop?
Okay, I'll go back and look.
It's there. I promise you. Any other questions on the volunteers recognition? And we appreciate our dispatchers too, because they have one of the harder jobs. That's a very stressful job where they're not only concerned about the individual that's calling, but they're concerned about the officer, and they really can't do anything except try to communicate as clearly and concisely as they can to both parties and try to make sure that both parties are safe. And I appreciate anybody that can do that, because it's a very highly stressful job. So thank you again very much. So with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Have a good night. Pardon me?
Can I say one thing?
Yes, you can.
I just want to invite all of you. One of our dispatchers actually has cancer, and so she has been out for quite a while right now, and is going to continue to be out. We are doing, the Knights of Columbus have graciously agreed to sponsor a dinner for us. You'll see flyers around town. I haven't had a chance to get one over here yet. We are doing that on the 30th of March from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's going to be at St. Anthony's Church at their parish hall. It's on the 307th Avenue or 703rd Avenue, something like that. But we're going to do a silent auction, spaghetti dinner. You guys are all more than welcome to come if you want to come. Anybody over at the police department would be a good contact. I've had everybody just use me, Jessica, as a contact, just to try and keep things a little bit more organized. But since we were speaking of dispatchers, you guys are now aware of that, and if you come, that would be, we would very much appreciate it.
Thank you very much. And we're putting a flyer in all the council members' boxes. If they haven't had one already placed in there, they will before next week. So they will be aware of that. And thanks for bringing that up again.
Thank you so much.
And with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. Have a good night.
So, did you, the city works, get an opinion about